Today, I would like to discuss the seriousness of immigration issues, which are not well known in Japan. For those who regularly follow international affairs online, you are likely aware that the immigration problem in Europe has become quite severe. European countries bear a certain level of responsibility for the refugee crises in regions such as the Middle East and Africa, where poverty is widespread and political systems are unstable. This responsibility stems, in part, from the colonial rule and economic dominance of European countries, making the acceptance of refugees somewhat justified. However, it is important to note that Japan has not been involved in these conflicts and, therefore, has no obligation to accept refugees from the Middle East or Africa. This situation has little to do with Japan. Yet in Europe, in the process of trying to accept refugees, many illegal immigrants seeking a better environment have also poured into the continent, leading to conflicts with local residents. There is a common assumption that refugees, being foreigners, will quietly respect the laws and culture of the host country. However, in reality, they often impose their own ways, leading to clashes, destruction, and criminal activities. Accepting many foreigners can become a significant issue for the host country, potentially deteriorating public safety beyond recovery. While this understanding is becoming common among those who gather information on the internet, mainstream media rarely touches on it. Currently, Japan is in the early stages of increasing immigration. For ordinary citizens, the increase in foreigners is not beneficial. Based on information from Europe, many of these immigrants are likely to be illegal rather than legitimate refugees. These illegal immigrants cause problems such as violence against locals and the destruction of vehicles. Politicians and the wealthy continue to advocate on television, saying, "We need to help these poor refugees," while ordinary citizens suffer. They accept these people as cheap labor. However, when foreign workers are accepted as cheap labor, local citizens have to compete with them for jobs, which suppresses wages. As a result, ordinary citizens start to think, wages would rise if these people were not here, but wages do not increase because cheap labor continues to flow in. This situation divides the nation between those who believe that accepting immigrants is good and those who suffer because of them. Initially, the voices of those who suffer are suppressed, but as the problem worsens, it becomes a major political issue, as seen in Europe. Politicians may even lose elections if they do not address the immigration issue. Japan is still in the early stages, but there are people who recognize Europe's severe situation and are concerned that Japan may follow the same path. However, these people are a minority in Japan. The majority, who only watch television, do not have this sense of crisis. Unfortunately, as the number of foreigners in Japan continues to increase, it will be ordinary Japanese people, not politicians or corporate executives, who suffer the most. When a large number of foreigners move into a region and form communities, they do not adapt to Japanese customs but rather stick to their own ways. This is already happening. I moved within Tokyo, but in the area I previously lived, there was a notice posted asking not to beat drums at night. Many foreigners lived in that building, and I was troubled by the noise late at night. Politicians and legislators who advocate for accepting foreigners do not experience such problems, so they do not understand them. However, ordinary Japanese people like me feel, this is not right, I just want to sleep. Fortunately, that problem was resolved, but as the number of foreigners increases, Japanese customs may be ignored, and ordinary people may suffer. Decision makers who advocate for accepting foreigners believe that they will not be affected initially, but eventually, even the wealthy will face problems. Let's look at the example of Singapore. In Singapore, the foreigner issue has become serious. There are two main points to note about this issue. First, in Singapore, you can obtain residency if you have money. This requires a significant amount of money, but you can obtain residency by investing in Singapore or running a large business. This type of system exists in other countries as well, and it is called an investment immigration policy. In Japan, there is a system called the business management visa, which allows you to obtain residency with a relatively small amount of money, by global standards. This system is actively promoted in Chinese-speaking regions, and people are guided on how to use it to settle in Japan. Specifically, they are advised to purchase real estate in Japan and run a rental business to obtain a visa. The wealthy are guided to purchase real estate in Japan and present it as a business to obtain a long-term visa. This has become a common method in China, and if you are interested, there are videos that introduce this method. Various countries are trying to attract the wealthy by promising residency. Singapore has been doing this for a long time, but among the very wealthy Chinese, some have earned their money through illegal means. Therefore, inviting very wealthy people from China also invites criminal organizations. Recently, Singapore experienced its largest money laundering case in history. The case, involving $3 billion Singapore dollars, was connected to Chinese criminal organizations. This shows that a system that grants residency to the wealthy can attract criminals. This is the first important point. The second point is that Singapore has waived visa requirements for Chinese people, making it very easy for them to enter the country temporarily. As a result, there has been a surge in burglaries and thefts by Chinese criminal organizations. These criminals enter Singapore, break into wealthy homes the next day, steal valuables, and leave the country immediately. Last year, there were 70 such cases, and in the first half of this year alone, there were 59 cases. Some of these burglars were caught, but most managed to leave the country before being arrested. Singaporean authorities have requested cooperation from Chinese authorities in investigating these crimes. 3 Chinese men, aged 27 to 43, who were arrested in Singapore were gathered through online connections to carry out these crimes. The important point is that these criminals are targeting wealthy households in Singapore. How do they know the locations of these homes, their security weaknesses, or which homes have valuables? Without sources of information within Singapore, they would not be able to obtain such details. Who possesses such information? It is likely people within the same wealthy community. In other words, there may be people within Singapore's wealthy class who are leaking information to Chinese criminal organizations, or the leaders of these criminal organizations may be among Singapore's wealthy class. Because Singapore has waived visas, they do not know who is entering the country. As a result, home invasions targeting wealthy individuals are increasing. Recently, there was an incident in Japan where Chinese individuals were arrested for robbery and murder at a watch shop, so Japan is also becoming a target for similar crimes. However, I don't think Japan's wealthy class is directly targeted yet, but it is only a matter of time. What I want to say is that even those in Japan who think they are safe from competition with immigrants or worsening public safety will eventually face the same threats as Singapore's wealthy class because they are not doing the same jobs as immigrants. If the situation continues, Japan's wealthy class will also become targets of foreign criminal organizations. By then, it will be too late. Unfortunately, there are very few Japanese people who recognize the dangers of immigration, so the country will continue on its current path. This means that along with the influx of immigrants, foreign criminal organizations will also enter the country. Initially, Japan's wealthy class may think that these crimes do not concern them, but eventually, these criminals will focus on the wealthy, and by the time they realize it, it will be too late. This scenario is already becoming a reality, and I am very worried. If the number of foreigners continues to increase in Japan, there will be more cases where people enter the country, commit a crime, and then leave immediately. That concludes today's discussion. See you in the next video.